In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, I'm going to share my thoughts and my personal scouting report on Rutgers freshman Dylan Harper. There are some people that believe that he could be in contention to be the first pick in the deep and talented 2025 NBA draft. There's others that believe that he's not even the best freshman on his team. But either way, I'm going to share my thoughts and give my opinion on Dylan Harper, a projected top 5 pick in next June's draft. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment. That is the best way to help us grow the channel. And like I said, I just want to thank each and every person that has supported over the last, since you've been supporting. And now we are in somewhat of the dead season as far as basketball goes. I know football is ramping up and a lot of people are excited about football, but we don't stop here at the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast because we are coming to you at least 3 times a week, giving you our scouting reports and just our overall analysis. And this is what we do. We're die-hard NBA draft junkies and fans. And before I get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by GameTime. All you have to do is download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you can get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So download the GameTime app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's talk about Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper is a guy that has a lot of fans. He has a lot of people that believe that he is a top 3 pick. Like I mentioned in the open, there's some that believe he can go as high as number 2. And there's some that believe that he has a good chance at being the number 1 pick. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Dylan Harper. He is going to Rutgers. Yes, Rutgers. And this will be my 3rd individual scouting report for 2025 prospects. And this is the 2nd guy from Rutgers. And if you've been sleeping under a rock, Rutgers signed Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. And Rutgers, it's not your blue blood school. It's not your Kansas. It's not your Duke. It's not your Kentucky. So there are going to be a lot of eyes on Rutgers. And I personally think that it's just in the best interest of college basketball to have a strong team with NBA prospects in the New York City area. I know UConn is not necessarily New York and it's in the Northeast, but I just think it's good for college basketball if St. John's or Rutgers or some of the other New York City area schools are good. And there's going to be a lot of eyes on Rutgers this year. So a little bit of background on Harper. He is the son of Ron Harper, and I'm old enough to remember Cleveland Cavaliers Ron Harper. If you're too young to remember Ron Harper, Google or YouTube Cleveland Cavaliers Ron Harper. He was crazy athletic. Not saying that he was Jordan's equal, but they used to have some really, really good battles. I'm showing my age here. I know a lot of people may remember Lakers Ron Harper or Chicago Bulls Ron Harper when he was essentially like the point guard, but Cleveland Cavaliers Ron Harper was special. It was just unfortunate that at that time ACL injuries were almost career enders, but Ron Harper was a really, really good athlete. So anyway, let's talk about Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper went to Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey. He averaged 23 points a game, and he led his school to a 26-3 record. One of the best performances that he had a 38-point game, and he had a 36-point game against DJ Wagner. So that was the year before. He was the MVP at the John Wall Holiday Invitational, and he led his team to a state final in New Jersey. Now, when I think of Dylan Harper, I see a combo guard. I think there's some people that see him as a point. There's scouts that I've talked to that think he can be a point at the next level. There's some that think he's a 2. I think he's a combo guard that is fine and comfortable playing both positions. I think that with his size that he is able to defend both positions. So he's someone that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year. When I've watched him play, I've always been impressed with just everything that he brings to the table. But I have some concerns, and I'll mention those later on. He's 6'6", 220 pounds. I mean, he is a physical guard. And in the high school level, and even in like some of the all-star games and so on, he's just been able to get where he wants to on the floor just because he's bigger, stronger, and even faster than a lot of his opponents. And what I like about him is that he's aggressive and he finds ways to impact the game in multiple ways. And he's a shot maker. I'm a big fan of guys that can create their own offense and generate their own shot. And with his size, I mean, he's got like a thick frame, broad shoulders. He's lefty. And so, a lot of times people believe that lefties are difficult to guard. And he's just a guy that, like I said, he's a shot maker. Step backs, has an arsenal of moves, and I think he's going to be one of the toughest covers individually in college basketball this season. And defensively, and like I mentioned, he has the size to guard both positions. So think about it, 6'6", 220 pounds. In today's NBA, where teams are playing small, Dylan Harper may be able to see some minutes as a small ball four. Like, there are teams that, like, for example, P.J. Tucker. Not saying Dylan Harper's P.J. Tucker. But P.J. Tucker played a lot of meaningful minutes and closed a lot of games at the four. And I think P.J. Tucker might be 6'5", maybe 6'4". Dylan Harper, with his size and his strength, he has the ability to defend multiple positions, and I think you can see him as a weapon that can play all over the floor and defend all over the floor. So that is one of the main appeals for Dylan Harper. All right, when we return, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Dylan Harper's offense because I think he is going to be able to score on three levels. I'll talk about some of his performances in the EYBL and USA basketball, and then I'll also dig a little deeper into his defense. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about GameTime. Why? Because GameTime is my favorite app when it comes to purchasing tickets, and you don't have to buy or use GameTime just for tickets to sporting events. They have plays, theaters, and comedy and more. And what I love about GameTime, it's my favorite feature, and there's a couple features that I go back and forth about which is my favorite one, but I love the fact that they have all-in pricing. All you have to do is toggle this feature, and it will show you the prices up front. No surprises at checkout. But the next feature that I really love is that you get a panoramic view of your seat. You don't have to worry about not knowing the view or where you're going to be sitting at or guessing what section is section 101 or section 102. GameTime will give you a picture of your seat before you purchase it. And then they have the lowest price guarantee, and they will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So what is taking so long for you to download the GameTime app? You can take the guesswork out of buying. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Just create an account. Use the redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. You can get $20 off your first purchase. So download the GameTime app today. What time is it? Game time. Once again, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On NBA podcast because there is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts, and you get it in 30 minutes or less because no one keeps you as informed or as entertained as Locked On NBA, which is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, second segment, I want to dig a little bit deeper into Dylan Harper. Like I mentioned, he comes from great pedigree. He is the son of Ron Harper, who played 15 years in the NBA. And the older I get and the more I'm around the game, the more I appreciate the fact that a player lasted for 15 years in the NBA, because there are a lot of really talented guys that are in and out in 3 or 4 years. And Dylan Harper is, like I mentioned, he's just strong physically, 6'6", 220 pounds. He's a lefty. He's comfortable playing on or off the ball. And he could end up playing both guard spots in the NBA. And I mentioned that I think we live in a world where we could see him seeing some minutes at the 4. One of the things that I like about his game on the offensive end is that he does a really good job of using a combination of his skill level, whether it's his ball handling, his offensive creativity, and his strengths to get to wherever he wants to get to on the floor. He changes speeds off the dribble. He just has a knack for keeping defenders off balance, not too predictable. And I think that's going to bode well for him in the NBA because not only can he pass the ball and create for others, he's more so of a reactive passer. But I think he could end up being like a matchup nightmare. If you put a small point guard on him, he may have a 30 or 40 pound weight advantage. If you put a bigger player on him, he may be able to beat him off the dribble. So I think he's going to be a matchup problem, especially on the college level. I think he's going to be a tough cover in the NBA down the line, but in college basketball where he may end up having guys 6'2", 6'3", 190 pounds defending him, he's going to have some big advantages. I like that he has a good feel for the game and good passing instincts, like I mentioned. He's more so of a reactive passer, but he knows how to do what's important. Get in the lane, draw 2 defenders, and kick it out to the open man. He plays with a really good poise and pace. I mean, you can tell, at least in my opinion, I don't want to say like when I watched him early, I said he's a pro, but you can tell that he's got some season to his game. So whether it's learning from his dad, he has an older brother, Ron Harper Jr., who was a really good college player, and last I remember was with the Toronto Raptors. But you can tell that he just has a sense of professionalism to his game. Plays with a lot of poise, pace, doesn't always get sped up, and he just has a really good understanding of the game. Now, as far as him being able to score on 3 levels, I think the potential is high. He can get to the rim. His athleticism to me was a little interesting. Like there are times when I watched him drive and I'm like, he doesn't have the same vertical pop as other athletes. But then there's times when I've seen him when he has a runway, he can make an athletic finish above the rim. But just his strength alone, he's going to be able to get past guys. And I think of Luka Doncic. Like Luka is not blazing fast. Guys can't stay in front of him because he's crafty, but he plays off 2 feet and he knows how to get by guys. And if he can't get by you, he can just take you for a ride on that shoulder, kind of bully you to the rim, and he's able to finish. And Dylan Harper, I think, is going to be similar in the sense to where if there is a matchup with a smaller defender, he's going to be able to bully him. But then if there's a guy that is stronger that can match his physicality, he may be able to beat him with his first step, but he does have the frame to where he should be able to just, it's almost like a running back in a sense, shed defenders to get to the rim. So I think he's going to be a good finisher at the rim. And then he does have like the offensive creativity as far as like the ball handling and the footwork to create space. He makes mid-range jumpers. And he's a respectable shooter from downtown. I wouldn't say he's crazy efficient at this point, but I mean, how many 18-year-olds are? But I do think that there is a high probability that he ends up being a 3-level scorer at some point in his career. And I want to talk about him going to the rim a little bit because with his frame and, like I said, the handle, he's going to be able to generate a lot of trips to the foul line. He draws fouls with his activity and his strength. So, like I said, I think he's going to be a really tough matchup. And this was on display in the Nike EYBL. He averaged, in his last year, 19 points, 6.7 rebounds, 4.9 assists for New York Rens. So he stuffs the stat sheet. And that's what a lot of teams are looking for when you talk about these high draft picks, especially if a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands. Can he rebound? And can he make plays for others? And I see Dylan Harper as a guy that is going to stuff the stat sheet. I wouldn't be surprised to see him average in college basketball this year anywhere between 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. I mean, I'll take 15, 5, and 5. But his ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor and stuffing the stat sheet is one reason why there's a lot of people, a lot of scouts that love Dylan Harper and see him as a top 5 pick. Another reason why he had such a successful high school career. I mean, he was the MVP of both the McDonald's All-American Game and the Jordan Brand Classic. And you just have to love a guy with that frame, the offensive creativity. I know I keep mentioning that. And he has a high basketball IQ. and he gets after it on defense, and he's competitive. All right, when we return, I'm going to talk a little bit about my concerns for Dylan Harper. Stay tuned. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, so that means you know FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and we have something a little different for you. Right now, until September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and you can get a 3-week free trial of the NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, now in this last segment, I want to talk about a little bit of concerns that I have. So I studied a lot of Dylan Harper's film. I watched pretty much almost every clip of him over the last few years, and I have a little bit of concerns. Now, I definitely think he is a top 5 pick, but one of my concerns is there are times, and I could just be nitpicking. I could be nitpicking here, but there are some times where it looks like he has a quick first step and burst, and then there are other times where it looks like he's kind of struggling a little bit to beat defenders off the dribble. And when he's struggling to beat defenders off the dribble, he's been able to rely on his strength to get to his spots. Now, one of the concerns that I have is that will that advantage be taken away once he gets to the NBA, once he's going against stronger defenders? So I mentioned PJ Tucker earlier. Is Dylan Harper able to create space against a guy like PJ Tucker? Now, I know PJ's like 40 years old now, but he can still move those puppies. He can still move his feet, but he is incredibly strong. So that is one of my concerns. And then another concern I have is about the vertical pop. Like I mentioned, it could be a strength, and I could be nitpicking here, but there are times where it looks like he struggles as far as just that quick twitch athleticism. And it may not impact him at all. But there are times where, like if he has a runway, for example, like if he, crosses a guy up at the top of the key and the lane is clear, if he gets that runway, then he can make a play above the rim. But there are plays where, like, let's say he's driving baseline and maybe he had to give a move, and there's like that quick second while he's at the rim where he doesn't have like a lot of momentum, that he just doesn't get up as high as you would like. And so I think that could be a concern against NBA level rim protection. But also, with the NBA, there's going to be so much space to where it may not even be an issue at all. And then I think that in the high school level, and we may see it in college, NBA may be a little bit different because there's spacing, but I do think there are times where he has a little bit of an issue reading the second line of the defense. We know that he can get by his man, but sometimes I think that he doesn't see the help coming. He'll pick up some charges, or he doesn't see where the big man is rotating at off his man because, on the high school level, he was able to get where he wanted to, but I thought there was a little bit of issues there that he didn't read the second line of the defense. I think that he can be forced into taking tough shots from time to time, and so something that I'll be paying attention to. And I think it's the same for his teammate at Rutgers with Ace Bailey. I think they both have a tendency to take some pretty wild shots. Now, the reason why I'm not as concerned with Harper, because I think that he does have he's a better passer, for one. I think that he does have a little bit better pace to his game. But also, when you're that gifted on offense, I do think that taking bad shots is not out of the ordinary. I mean, you name an NBA player that is a gifted scorer, and I can tell you someone that has a tendency to take difficult shots. I live in Dallas. I watch Luka Doncic play all the time. There are at least 1 or 2 plays per game where I'm scratching my head and saying that is a bad shot, Luka. Kobe Bryant is known for taking difficult shots, taking them and making them. I don't think Dylan Harper is that level of a shot maker, which, I mean, who is? There's only a few guys that are. But I do think that he has a tendency to have some spotty shot selection. Now, another concern that I have is that if he's playing off the ball, I think there is a low flat release on his jump shot. And I think that could be the difference sometimes between an open look and a contested shot. And it also makes me wonder, when he's able to create space, is he going to be able to create enough space off the dribble to offset the low release on his shot? Now, I had this concern about Trae Young in 2018. I didn't think he was going to get his shot off because it's like a low release. Looks like he's shooting it from his chest. But Trae Young offset that by, one, shooting the ball from crazy deep, but he has the speed, and he's a guy that, he's just incredibly crafty. So I could be nitpicking here, but those are just a couple of my concerns regarding Dylan Harper that could maybe have a little impact on his draft stock. But overall, as of today, I think he is a top 5 pick. I think he's one of the more appealing and intriguing prospects in this draft. And like I said, pretty much all episode, 6'6", 220 pounds. I think he's going to be able to defend multiple positions. I think he's going to be able to play multiple positions on offense, and he can get his own shot. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Thank you for listening to this individual episode on Dylan Harper. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'm going to talk about the guy that a lot of people may believe or they think could be his competition as the first guard selected in the 2025 NBA Draft. And I'm talking about France's Nolan Traore, who has a lot of believers in him. A lot of people think he's the best French point guard since Tony Parker, and the answer to France's struggles beating the U.S. in Olympic competition. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. We're going to talk about Traore. He had a good preseason debut. So stay tuned for the next episode where I'm going to give my individual analysis on France's Nolan Traore. But before I go, I want to let you know that I appreciate you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. Don't forget, you got to check out the Locked On NBA podcast because the season never ends. You get local and national expertise. And you can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description so you do not have to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe, and I am out.